Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Totally Not Mark. I was going to check out the One Piece TV specials, the last review he has for One Piece, but I've come home from work and we've got a Naruto review, so I'm like, yes! Because I seen him on Twitter posting about the Sakura thing, and I think that's going to be brought up here, because I can see in the title we've got the Great Sakura Debate, and we've got the 5 Kage Summit, so some interesting stuff happening in this part of the story. Let's see what Mark thought about it, shall we? Fans in the West take anime very seriously, huh? Yes, they do. My god. Could you move?
So, I've had an interesting week.
Yeah.
A few days ago, I read this page of Naruto.
Mate.
And without posting my thoughts on it, I shared the image on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
This was a mistake.
That's a discussion in itself.
Had I seen such vitriol, venom, and pure hatred ooze out from a fan base before. Remember now, I don't know anything about Naruto.
Yeah, you're doing it blind.
To me, I had just stumbled into one of the most heated arguments I've yet come across on the internet that didn't have to do with politics. People were attacking each other. Heck, people were attacking me.
Yeah, man.
I didn't even say anything.
I'm not surprised.
The argument was enough to entice some
it's a moment.
into ordering the deletion of my account if my opinion on a cartoon girl they liked or disliked
doesn't match them.
Match theirs.
Yeah.
It's not a cartoon. It's anime.
Let's go.
Ready for war.
I love it.
This is gonna be a great video.
I'm loving all the Linkin Park covers.
Following the events of the Pain Assault, Konoha is uniquely weakened with
Konoha? It's Konoha!
Kage in a comatose state, resulting in Danzo, the prick who brainwashed Sai and has been slithering around in the background for a while now, becoming the 6th Hokage in her absence. I can smell conflict brewing already. In order to decide...
He's not counted as a Hokage though, it's so weird.
All 5 Kage is held, and prior to leaving for this gathering, Danzo's first rule is to effectively authorize the killing of Sasuke, overturning Tsunade's rule entirely. This was a great start to the story, I found. It sets up the building blocks to be
There's tension.
so to speak. Following the Pain Assault arc, while we still have this nebulous overarching goal of regrouping with Sasuke in order to convince him to come back to the village, without a concrete plan of how best to do that, it remains a less immediate concern.
I like that they introduced Samurai in this as well, which is cool.
Despite it being the main motivation for Naruto himself. With that said, however, the combination of this overarching
didn't really do much with it though, did
addition
they?
of a new Hokage in Danzo creates a unique pressure to be applied to this desire from
He wastes his ultimate technique.
Conflict with the Akatsuki and 5 great nations. Finally, all of these chess pieces are starting to come together in a meaningful way, and right now I can really feel a progression towards a big finish in this arc.
Hell yeah.
Naruto needs to watch what he does in his presence. He doesn't want to give Danzo a reason to lock him away as a Jinchuriki. Thankfully, it's demonstrated that not only will Naruto not be acting heatedly or emotionally in response to all of this, but in fact quite the opposite. When faced with some cloud ninjas looking for information on Sasuke in an aggressive manner, Sakura is reduced to tears with the news that they laid before her.
Yeah.
Pushing back against these unwarranted words of antagonism that speak ill not only of his friend Sasuke, but causes Sakura distress, Naruto doesn't act how he might have acted in the past. He uses the fact he's a Jinchuriki as a means of bridging the gap between their village and his. He says that they shouldn't be focusing on capturing Sasuke and seeking revenge, but instead focusing on rescuing their sensei first. It's another instance that demonstrates how much Naruto has grown as a person, and also
he definitely has matured, man.
Those that seek revenge have transformed him into someone that does not seek that out. Knowing where it can lead one down, Naruto is like the ultimate hero's journey in this respect. At every turn, he tries to diffuse any and all tension while avoiding glorifying his own goals and circumstances. He willingly accepts a beating from the cloud.
Yeah, he does. He just takes it, doesn't he? He's like,
will ultimately bring them down in seeking out Sasuke. And when he shares the important information about his meeting with the 4th Hokage in his mind, he chooses not to share that he was his father. And I think that's really telling of where Naruto is right now mentally. When one gloats, one does so because they feel insecure about another person's perception of them and wants to elevate their standing artificially in their peers' eyes. In the beginning, Naruto was a real blowhard, and that was a reaction to how others belittled and neglected him.
Yeah.
However, nowadays he's adored by the people. He has no need to gloat. If anything, he's incredibly humble about
humble.
Instead,
Like it.
what he felt was the most important part of it to him, that his father believed in him.
Believe it. Oh,
but let's get to some
so nice.
Following this, Naruto goes goes to the Kage summit, escorted by Kakashi and Yamato, with the mission being...
They're cool cloaks, man.
Belief in love, in and of itself, seems to be a strong theme in this story, and primarily this arc, too. Naruto values what belief can do for someone, and so won't turn his back on his friend Sasuke.
You gotta believe it.
He will always believe that he can be saved. Kakashi believes in Naruto then as a result, and so follows him on what ends up being a complete waste of time mission to request peace at the summit. And even with Sai, this is a character that sits on the fence between Danzo and Naruto. One who, if left to his own devices, would most likely have chosen Naruto.
Sai was such a weird character, man. He didn't bring much, like, to the table.
No one, and even goes as far as to curse Seal Sai's tongue from speaking against his interests.
Yeah.
It's screwed up, but this all has a greater purpose. The main thematic takeaway I gleaned from this arc was that of two diametrically
Danzo
ideologies
was
setting
weird.
themselves up for an inevitable collision down the road. And we see all of this information as the World Summit yields nothing but distrust and lack of belief in the current structure, as Danzo sought to manipulate the little goodwill that existed through the Land of Iron's suggestion that he be the Five-Nation Army leader, at the beginning at least. The parts of the arc that deal with the political unrest that's brewing, while being a little wordy at times, felt appropriate for the setting and interesting throughout for me, not overstaying their respective welcomes either, mind you. As tensions climb in the summit meeting and dishonesty is rooted out, the physical reason for their mistrust
Zetsu just pops up.
Everyone, and it doesn't stop there either.
This was fucking cool. It's like, what? Whoa.
There's a story that's shared with us of two
I remember seeing that in the manga and just being like, huh?
The son believed that peace could only be achieved through power, while the younger believed it could be achieved through love. A clear thematic parallel with the characters of Sasuke and Naruto respectively. With even more again, Sasuke being the embodiment of this power-hungry ideology speaks to his prior engagements, and the same will be true for Naruto. Sasuke's older brother Itachi subscribed closer to love than Sasuke did, who showed him mercy leading to his death, embracing hatred, embracing revenge. Whereas Naruto, particularly as he gained better control over himself, which speaks to this being the more difficult path, has found success in treating people with mercy and love. With one of those very people Naruto helped, Gaara, even going as far as to try and convince Sasuke to return to
it's like, come on. Naruto got his stuff together, man. He knows what he's doing.
How obsessed with aggression, hatred, and power he seems, which brings him to tears. He's been there before. It's a great moment. And these themes of love versus hatred,
I love seeing Gaara actually be like that.
Distrust and responsibility are what makes this arc as philosophically interesting as it otherwise ends up being. Ignoring the obvious being Naruto's position on the side of trust, that doesn't entirely mean that that side is the obvious correct choice either. A significant portion of the story deals with Naruto's friend group, primarily Sakura, and the guilt they and she feels for putting too much of their trust and belief in Naruto, placing him under tremendous pressure.
We gotta do something, guys. We're the side characters.
Are they being selfish by expecting Naruto to work a miracle here? And it's easy to see why they come to this decision they do. The choices Kishimoto made to inject nuance into the story like this makes what could have become an otherwise far too simple and straightforward story into an exciting one. And that's exactly what you need to do when writing an arc that hinges so much on dialogue and introspection like this. There is a decent amount of fighting in this arc once the jig is up.
Mate, yeah, it gets sick, doesn't it?
Yo. Watching Sasuke contends with each Kage that stood in his way was a real page turn.
And the samurai dude. Some interesting techniques, man. See, these Kage have so much more going on for them than the Kage in Boruto.
Not to mention his chakra gets depleted. The main significant takeaway from this I took was that of Sasuke's reliance on his friends, or the cell team he assembled, should I say. With practically every encounter he engages with here, had it not been for his team having his back, he would surely have lost.
Oh god, he'd be dead.
Activity, Madara shows up and saves Sasuke from certain defeat, taking this as his opportunity to announce the fourth shinobi.
It's funny seeing someone that's not read it before talking about it. It's like,
He wishes to control and to absorb the power of the nine-tailed beasts in order to control the world, stripping the populace of their autonomy, thus securing world peace as a result of that.
Yeah.
I guess now we have an endgame. And while the Five
we
Nations
do.
to join forces against this foe, given the mistrust that they have for one another, I can't see that working out. So, what happens next?
Ninja War. Here we go. Jesus.
Absolutely no idea was as controversial as it happens to be. Before getting
Hey,
into this,
come on.
be perfectly clear here. I am not part of any Naruto community.
I need to take a step back from this.
And I was not influenced by anything other than the material I read to come to these conclusions and feelings I have regarding this series.
Yeah.
I have a number of things to say about this, not all negative. However, one thing I have noticed exceptionally passionate about this particular argument, which is why I have tried to make my thoughts concerning this narrative decision as thorough as I possibly could, even double-checking my perspective by asking all of you guys on Twitter. So, whether we end up agreeing or disagreeing on this particular occasion, I thank you for your feedback.
Here we go.
With that said,
Now,
let's get into my immediate reaction and then my more nuanced understanding of what Kishimoto was going for and whether or not I thought he was successful. My immediate reaction to this was a little hyperbolic.
right.
Everyone, I give you the panel of no return. For on this page, resting lovingly upon the top panel, Kishimoto speed round the character killing or character defining moment for Sakura, depending on who you're talking to. And unfortunately, I find myself leaning much more negatively for a host of different reasons.
I hated it, man. I was like, why are you lying to him?
However, I do have some positives to speak of with regards to the scene, and I want to be clear that I still stand by all my prior praisings of her character from earlier in this story. I can't hold young Sakura accountable for the sins of her present self.
No,
but
cool, yeah.
I digress. Holy fucking shit, this shocked me.
Yeah.
The more I read, the more I found myself leaning back in my chair, hand placed firmly over my face. There's a moment earlier in this arc where Sai confronts Sakura about the promise she asked Naruto to keep, and the pressure that promise might put on him. On paper, this idea for conflict within the character of Sakura makes sense for both her character and the story, as it could lead to some interesting conflict. However, unfortunately, it never fully makes use of it at best and totally botches its potential at worst. From the outset, I want to make it clear that I am not someone that believes Sakura was being fickle and just wanted Naruto when Sasuke became a non-starter.
No, that's not what it is.
Shallow. I think anyone that thinks that clearly hasn't read or watched the material, and if they have,
No, it wouldn't die at all. No, no.
Attention if that's their takeaway.
I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
What I personally dislike about this scene isn't just one thing in isolation. It's that it's one hasty, naive, albeit well-intentioned for the most part, choice made that has a rolling knock-on series of obviously negative outcomes. Outcomes that should have been abundantly obvious to anyone, particularly a shinobi like Sakura. My first issue. Sakura feels guilty for potentially being a reason Naruto is assuming so much responsibility.
Yeah, she's just saying it to try and, like, get response from it.
Because it was a promise that he made to her. This is interesting and absolutely worth exploring further. It's true to her character, however, in order to alleviate that guilt, and indeed because she cares about Naruto, she decides to lie to him in an effort to protect him. This is, regardless of her reasoning, manipulation.
It really is. Yeah.
In doing so, she is lying to the face of someone she supposedly cares about, using something that he has deeply wanted in the past, a potential relationship with her, and she knows that.
She is using him. It's scummy.
This lie is also attempting to rob Naruto of his autonomy as a character, to force him into making a specific choice that she agrees with, that she thinks is the right thing to do. She's trying to make the decision for Naruto in this effort of manipulation. This, to me, is worse than her trying in earnest to get with Naruto because she's done with Sasuke. It has layers of manipulation.
There's so much bad stuff going on.
Results in a massively obvious, immature, and somewhat selfish decision being made out of desperation. My third issue. The motivation behind the scene is fine, kind of, but the execution could not have been worse. Furthermore, what Sakura tries to do, assuming her goal is to take the pressure off of Naruto and take agency, by going to confront the Akatsuki herself, is one of the most incomprehensible.
Yeah, like, how could you even possibly think you could do anything like what?
At this particular point in time. There's no amount of mental gymnastics I can perform to rationalize this choice, particularly for someone that's known for how clever she is. Now,
yeah, she's meant to be
one
smart.
might say, and rightfully so, that people in desperate times make irrational decisions.
Yeah.
This is true. However, I have two arguments against this. One is narratively driven, and the other is character driven.
Cool.
We'll do the character one first.
Alright.
Sakura is a ninja, a shinobi, a warrior that has seen some awful things and has come close to death numerous times.
Yeah.
Her speciality requires her to have a level head in intense situations. And the level with which she fails to make even the faintest rational decision here feels incredibly convenient for the plot and inconvenient for us sitting at home.
Right, yeah.
I'll get to that. She's been trained as what's essentially a military operative, and if she's been made aware of just how powerful Sasuke has gotten even remotely, she has to be aware that Naruto is the only one capable of stopping him at that moment. The pain incident proved that Naruto is the strongest ninja in their village, and by an incredible incredibly wide margin at that. Taking him off of this proverbial chessboard
Makes
would be the
no
equivalent
sense.
of not using your queen because you're too scared of it being taken out. All the while you charge in guns blazing with your good intentions and a bunch of pawns to your inevitable demise.
Good intentions for the word!
Sakura makes some incomprehensibly bad decisions in this arc, which brings me to my narrative.
Narrative argument. Cool.
No one likes tension built upon a lack of communication. Bad communication at that. If your scenes are driven simply by two characters not being honest with one another, that can very, very easily feel incredibly frustrating for an audience member.
Was awkward to read.
And this just wasn't the time or place for this. For the longest time, Sakura has slowly been slipping into the background of this series, with even characters like Konohamaru getting to do more than her in recent memory. And so, for her character to do something like this is annoying at best and idiotic and dangerous at worst. And considering she's leading a charge with others in her stead, I'm leaning towards the latter. Miscommunication now drives this narrative. And while Itachi did do something similar with Sasuke, not being honest with him, which created the tension and conflict in the story around that time, Kishimoto approached that narrative choice completely differently. We never knew any of this was fabricated on one side, and thus the tension felt natural during the conflict. All the while, when it was revealed, it did so during the climax of that narrative decision, with all of the thematic relevance laid bare alongside the climax for the world to see. In other words, we were able to enjoy it. However, with this situation, I feel like I already know where it's going, what will happen, and what the lesson will eventually be.
Yeah,
Sucking all of the fun and drama out of this
it really does, like,
dramatic situation.
gone.
And finally, my fourth issue. All of this was ignited by the advice of Sai, a character that is literally defined in the series by how emotionally unintelligent.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything going on.
To contribute immediately once to take Sakura, and when he did so, she took a completely different hook, line, and sinker. Naturally, this is my smallest gripe, admittedly.
Yeah, but it's quite funny that.
But that's why I left it here for last.
That's cool.
And that's just the initial 2 chapters. As this story with Naruto continues, and he eventually catches wind of what's going on with Sakura moving to attack Sasuke, this king suffers a panic attack.
Yeah, this was weird.
Sinks for this character. He's trying so hard to do the right thing, to be honest, and everyone around him just seems to be a fucking suicidal maniac. And what's more is, this part didn't even really make sense to me when I read it the first time. In this, Sai says to Naruto, quote, "That's why she came here, to tell you all of that." Now, when he says that, he means her and her desire to go off and fight Sasuke to kill him. Which, by the way, she never said. All she did was pretend to profess her love for him and then peace out without further explanation. To which Naruto reasonably responds with, "Why didn't she just say that?" And to that, they say, it's not that easy, and that she was trying to avoid hurting Naruto. At no point did she say what she was doing or why. Without Sai and everyone else there to effectively communicate her feelings for him, he would have had literally no comprehension of what she or her friends are doing.
Actually
right now,
doing,
despite her
so yeah.
supposedly having come to tell him just that. Sakura is someone that made this choice in an effort to bring Naruto into the least amount of danger. She wants him to succeed and to do well. She is his friend. To me, this just does not justify what she did in trying to manipulate him, and only really makes sense if I assume she's capable of making literally the worst possible decisions, placing herself and her loved ones in life-threatening danger, all the while achieving the opposite of what she set out to do, placing Naruto into an even more dangerous and compromising position because she herself is now in danger. Okay, time for some positives.
There we go.
I think the reason this frustrated
God, we're still going. Whoa.
thus far was primarily because it could have been really great. First of all, let me say that I think this scene does a lot of cool things thematically for both characters involved. Conversations
It's nice that Naruto clocks on as well and doesn't just be like,
with one another about something personal or important are usually terrific and rich with profound introspection and catharsis. Sakura and Naruto have a long shared and turbulent history together ripe for the picking, and in this scene there's plenty of nuance present that I liked and I touched on it earlier. From Sakura's point of view, she sees Naruto as someone that's trapped in his own fantasy. A person she deeply cares about has a love for her which forces him to take increasingly more extreme action, putting himself into life-threatening danger, she thinks. That's her perspective. And believing that's the reality, Sakura feels a tremendous amount of guilt and responsibility to alleviate that stress. And that's a really cool idea. And what makes it even better is Naruto's response to that.
See that, bitch? Bam. Hell yeah.
This is one of the best decisions
Chad
made,
move.
not only in this arc, but perhaps some of the most important thematic and character-defining lines heading into this big climax with Madara, highlighting for us as an audience how Naruto handles and doesn't handle every piece of news that comes his way. Earlier in this arc, Madara expresses to the world leaders what his ultimate goal
It's so funny that he keeps doing that, but yeah, cool.
Autonomy using infinite Tsukuyomi. The infinite Tsukuyomi is an extremely powerful genjutsu that traps the entire world
Everybody!
in an illusion, enslaving the human population in a dream so that their chakra may be drawn upon by the god tree. Or at least that's what it says on Narutopedia. It is in effect
you're right.
which traps the victim in a fantasy, a delusion. And in the scenes where Naruto is forced to contend with the fantasy and delusion Sakura offers him that he has always wanted, he unflinchingly chooses reality.
Yep, he's like, no,
Difficult option
no,
to
that's not right.
in a
Stop
lie,
lying to me.
Because, as he says,
You're a bitch.
he hates those people. The responsibility to trudge forward no matter how hard reality can be, and as we can see, it can be extremely difficult, particularly for him. And that's what this arc is all about in a sense with regards Cell 7 or Team 7. Each character is at their most desperate, made evident by the crazy decisions Sakura made, the lengths Sasuke is willing to go to, and obviously with the way Naruto's circumstances are causing him to feel. Gone are the days of childhood concerns and vapid spats. We are on the cusp of war, and we feel that with each subsequent page turn. And so, putting a pin on this Sakura scene, there are clearly some interesting ideas and profoundly interesting thematic choices made that speak wonderfully to the character of Naruto, and in some ways Sakura. However, all of this good, I think, really came at the cost of any and all respect I had for the Sakura character as a competent and level-headed ninja. Now time for something completely different. Kisame versus Killer Bee is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, it
I
is.
had no idea
Yo.
Kisame would transform like that. I mean, was it hinted at before, or was
No.
it a surprise for people? Let me know.
It was a
down below.
surprise. I was very much like, yo, that's
I
sick.
think what I like most about this fight is what it meant for this series moving forward. This second form, and indeed even the Tails forms Killer Bee utilizes, are nothing new to the series. However, what's interesting here is that
He
Killer
can
Bee
use them better than Naruto can.
of this form, and with that, it makes me wonder if Naruto will have to learn how to
Yeah.
do the same. It seems like the natural final
But doesn't he train with... He trains with Killer Bee, doesn't he?
I mean, it's literally him mastering the demon inside of him. It's a cool concept, but who
It's
knows?
dead cool.
Speculation is a complete waste of time. The fight itself is really cool, with Kisame breaking out a sword that can suck chakra, which comes in handy later in the fight. But moreover, as it looks like he's about to win against Killer Bee, Kage shows up, and then the two brothers just decapitate
Yeah, they do.
Kisame, which I wasn't expecting, although now that we're heading towards the endgame, it makes sense to nix some characters here.
Yeah, they gotta get him out of the way.
And speaking of nixing some characters, it's time for a fight I wasn't anticipating to be nearly this damn good. Danzo versus Sasuke.
This was sick.
Sasuke's fight with Danzo is the battle
It's so
I
clever.
never knew I needed until I got it. My God Almighty, this fight works on so many different levels,
Yeah.
and not just from the clearly exquisite visuals.
It's clever, all the genjutsus and stuff that get thrown around. It's like, ooh.
Danzo is a fascinating individual for Sasuke to square off against from his village. Both of these characters represent two diametrically opposed extreme convictions, neither of which desirable. One willing to do literally everything in his power to protect his village, and the other desiring nothing more than to destroy that village. Neither are seen as just or virtuous characters within the story, and in effect are both antagonists. I'm probably the only one who made this association, but whenever I see a character like Danzo, one that's driven by extreme measures out of mistrust and fear of the consequences, I think of the 1999 film, The Iron Giant. If you haven't seen
Interesting.
it's a brilliant story, and the book it's based off of is fantastic also. Set during the Cold War of the 1950s, one of the best characters is Kent Mansley. While there are some obvious and major differences between himself and Danzo, what I find fascinating about these types of characters is how easy it is to empathize with their respective points of view. Not to justify their actions, mind you, but understand them. It ends up
Yeah, that's the one. It's not like say they're right. It's like you get why they do in it.
And when Danzo removed that brace from his arm, revealing a lady of Sharingan eyes he'd harvested from the fallen Uchiha clan, I knew this fight was going to be
It was going to be
all
sick.
sorts of
Yes,
messed up
like
and
crazy stuff.
disappoint. Armed with an arm of Sharingans, this battle between these two fighters erupts into an incredibly well-animated game of chess, hinging the abilities of each wielder
It's just
specific
clever.
strengths
So
to be
sick.
utilized in tandem with either misdirection or pure tenacity. There's a terrific visual marker established partway through the fight with Danzo and his remaining eyes acting as sort of a lives system. sacrificing an eye to prolong his struggle against Sasuke. And that's not to say Danzo doesn't do work in this either. He does incredibly well.
Yeah, he does.
Better than I thought he would. In terms of choreography and setup for the fight, this one has a very good ending, I think. All the while utilizing misdirection not just on Danzo, but with us as
Yeah, the way Sasuke makes him think that the eye's still open.
An illusion which caused Danzo to believe he had a spare
Yeah, that was so sick, yeah.
life, so to speak, when in fact
He didn't, it's closed.
His desperate gambit at the end. This took me by surprise.
Yeah, man. But it's like, Sasuke doesn't care.
But I really didn't want it to happen. Karen had literally been offering up her lifeblood to Sasuke in order to rejuvenate him. This whole thought process was cut off, though, as Danzo goes full kamikaze mode.
Yeah.
A short but wonderfully insightful flashback sharing with us the past of both Hiruzen and Danzo prior to either of them achieving higher status in their village. Each one acting as a sort of counterbalance, so to speak, to the other. Hiruzen would go on to operate in the light as Hokage and Danzo in the shadows.
Yeah, it's in the dark, like behind, meddling.
To the bitter end. And quite unlike Kent Mansley and Iron Giant, Danzo at the very least is brave enough to die for his convictions and not become overwhelmed by the task or foe in front of him. It's a really cool moment that sort of recontextualizes a lot of what he's done up until now. Sort of.
Kinda.
Sakura and Sasuke. There's a really cool scene that takes place immediately following the aftermath.
This was so, like, it was nice to see that, like, he was just like, I do not care.
Being polished off by the uncaring Sasuke, and suddenly Sakura shows up. I'm not exactly sure how I should feel about what she did to her friends, though, on the way to meet with Sasuke. I mean, I'm happy she did what she could to spare their lives from what ultimately amounted to a terrible strategic move. I didn't mention it before, but the idea that all of them would take action like that with little to no strategy genuinely surprises me. Regarding Sakura,
They normally go in
however,
with a
the
plan,
large part
like
of the
being like,
story
we got
deals
this,
with
it's like,
Sakura actively
oh.
making her presence felt in the story and celebrating her autonomy as a character. But she does so by robbing everyone else of theirs. It's a really strange decision narratively, particularly because of what happens at the end of all of this. Her plans fail twice, achieving nothing, and even admits to some extent that she's just been in the way. So what's being achieved here exactly? To me, it just feels like Kishimoto wanted only Cell 7 to be present for the final confrontation of the arc, to reunite, and didn't have a way of getting Sakura there without her making a host of extremely rash decisions, putting herself into harm's way on two separate accounts. The first time when her plan, if you can even call it that, leading to her trying to convince Sasuke that she's going to be on his side, but he sees through that, surprises her, she fails, and then Kakashi has to save her.
Yeah, like, Kakashi jumps in last second.
In the room, there's some really nice imagery evocative of the last moment she and Sasuke had one-on-one. Before he initially left, he flashes behind her to thank her. In that moment, she feels a connection with Sasuke. It's kind of nice. However, this time, he deceives her, and once behind her,
He's kind of a killer. I was like,
entirely different person. A coldness, as Karen put it. There's a really cool thematic visual contrast that speaks to the progression of these two characters and their relationship. I can see why
I can't wait to
wanted her be
see
there in that
Mark's,
moment.
like,
I just think the means
reaction
by which he
to
gets her there is really
who
strange and
Madara actually is. It's like, whoa.
Naruto's
Yeah.
journey to this place, however, has been great. Trying to deal with all of the responsibility, all of the stress, a panic attack, him escaping in a creative way to deal with Sasuke himself, using the sage mode he learned earlier in the prior arc to locate him, and when he arrives, he does so in dramatic fashion following the fight with Kakashi when he saves Sakura. The fight between Sasuke and Kakashi isn't super long, and apart from the obviously cool rogue student versus regretful master dynamic at play, one particular part stood out to me as really nice. Sasuke's dialogue or interactions with Kakashi in these moments has him saying things like only the Uchiha are able to wield the Sharingan. However, through his adept fighting with it, Sasuke acknowledges him. Well, sort of. This happens only in the anime, and I can see why it wasn't involved. In the manga, this fight is actually quite short and barely a fight at all.
Interesting. I don't think I watched the anime version of this fight.
Like in the anime does have a cool line where Sasuke declares that he's about to show what a real master of the Sharingan can do, only for him to start losing his sight. It's a really nice visual touch that draws attention to the path he's heading down, with his spirit kaiju fading away just like his vision. And in that moment, Sakura takes advantage of the situation yet again. Now, I bet a lot of people hate on this, but at the same time, this is a uniquely difficult situation to be in, and one she thought, or at least wanted to believe, she was capable of following through with. And honestly, I think I understand both sides of this argument. Not to say I'm I'm sitting on the fence here. I think while the idea was interesting, the execution left a lot to be desired. I will, however, say that what happens in this scene surrounding these characters reminds me a lot of what happened to two particular characters in Attack on Titan. What I'm about to say has some big spoilers for the first half of Season 4, which aired
Oh, that's fine.
here, so
Cool.
skip to this timestamp if you want
No,
to
that's fine. I've seen it. Like,
This reminded me a lot of the conversations and hatred a lot of people directed and had for the character of Gabby after she killed Sasha.
mate.
Despite many of those same people not feeling nearly as much negativity towards Aaron's actions, which led to the deaths of thousands that same night. All because we're following Aaron's story and not Gabby's. Similar to that, in this story we've been following the life of Naruto and have built a strong connection with him. Many of us on a personal level, as made evident by...
Internet went crazy when that happened. Like,
because of this, Sakura, a character which has played an increasingly smaller role as of late in the series, suddenly starts taking not only an active role driving her own tale, but makes choices that actively make the life of the main character that we're following so much harder. For reasons that honestly don't make a lot of sense outside of her feeling that she has to be part of or shoulder some of this responsibility, ultimately achieving nothing. I genuinely think that partially due to her inactivity, it created a situation where fans were far less likely to be charitable towards her actions. But that's just my take. And that brings us to the end of the 5 Kage summit. I had intended on covering more in this video, but when I discovered how much the conversation and dialogue online was surrounding Sakura in this particular arc, I knew that I had to dive in there with a lot more detail. Plus, this arc had a surprising amount happen too. Like Danzo becoming the temporary 6th Kage, the 5 Kage summon itself. The
temporary is definitely a thing, because like whenever they bring up Kages in videos and that, I'm like,
and of course, Team 7's
what about Danzo? But never brought up.
Speaking of which, if you do disagree with anything I said, that's cool. Everyone's entitled to their own takes on a fictional character, and while I know this might be a futile effort, much like Sakura, I'm going to try anyway. Please be kind to each other in the comment section. I know without even looking.
Why are you even saying this, Mark?
Try to respect everyone.
No.
Next week I'll be starting the 4th Shinobi War arc.
Sick.
And I hope I can see
So we're doing more Naruto next week, yay.
I've been Toy Not Sakura, and I'll see you all next time.
Do you know, I had a random thought while watching this, like, what's he going to do after Naruto? I'd love to, because it'd be really apparent for, like, when the anime starts airing, like, he could time it. Bleach. I'd love to see him review the Bleach manga next. That would be really freaking cool. And I want him to keep doing Berserk. I need to read more Berserk. Loving Berserk. But yeah. Oh god, I'm so sorry. I should pick better times to record these. I literally get in from work and go, right, let's record another video. I'm like, oh. But yeah, that was cool. I like that review. The Sakura discussion is something else. And I keep forgetting that like most of Shippuden I've not watched anime-wise. It's like I've just read the manga. Like maybe I should watch it. It's all on Crunchyroll, isn't it? I should just watch it. But anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video, upload a link in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month with all the assholes support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys very much for that. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know that you watch good future videos. And I'll see you guys next time.